Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 box office. I am your host, Brian Mensing. As always, joining me is my co-host, Derrick Veurink. How you doing this evening?
Pretty good, Brian. You?
I can't complain. It's been a long weekend. It's weird to
Yep.
say I'm looking forward to Monday, and I don't know
How
why.
dare you? How dare
I
you?
know. How dare I say that? How dare I say that? So yeah, it is. It's been a weekend here, and so hopefully we'll have some fun stuff to talk about this week.
Yes.
Um, I did take a quick peek at the numbers and whatnot, and I'm kind of it's an interesting week this week. It's a quiet week, but an interesting week at the same time.
Yeah, there are some things we'll talk about, but yeah, we're kind of getting into that late January slump where we're not getting much for new movies, and that's what's going to make it interesting because we're mainly just going to be talking about a lot of holdovers, but there's
Yeah.
still some things to talk about within those movies. So,
So speaking of that, so it's pretty it's a common thing that January we have a little bit of slump, especially when we get in the latter half of the year.
mhm.
Uh, what do you attribute to that? Because there's times of the year where you feel like you're getting overstacked, and then there's weeks like there's in January where it's kind of sluggish.
Well, traditionally in the movie going year, January has always kind of been seen as the dump yard for movies.
Hmm.
That the studios are putting out all like their biggest and best movies right around Christmas time because that's when people are going to the theaters in droves and they want their best and brightest product out for that. And so, because of that, January kind of has lended itself to become a month where we kind of get the also rans or the movies that aren't big enough to necessarily sustain themselves during the holiday season, whether it be Christmas or Thanksgiving or so forth. So, and there's also been some struggles because there has been not that many, but there have been some movies that have been delayed from January to later due to Omicron and stuff like that, but not
Hmm.
much. So that's kind of why I mean, let me just put it this way. Last year with January, we only had like two new movies, period.
Right.
And so with that measure, already doing a lot better than that. But it's just a tricky thing. And again, February is going to be stacked with movies. There's like two or three big movies every weekend in February, but we just have to get through the January hump first. So,
Well, I myself I've always thought it fascinating just because if even if you don't think it would work during like the holidays and whatnot, if you had like a consistent throughout the year for movies and whatnot, you'd think that would help a studio and whatnot. But you know, I guess maybe that's why I'm not in the business for that kind of stuff.
I mean, things are changing. I mean, 2 years ago, we had like Bad Boys for Life make $70 million on opening weekend. Obviously, that was right before COVID struck, but
Right.
that kind of showed what you can do if you put a big enough movie out there or a movie that people are at least curious enough to go see.
Hmm.
So
One of them
that's
that
what it
people,
is.
if people want to go see it, they're gonna go see it. Doesn't matter what time of the year that it is.
Exactly.
I mean, like for instance, if say there was no pandemic going on and whatnot, if you drop Top Gun in January, don't matter if it's January or July, people are gonna go.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so. But hey, again, that's just me. So going
Mhm.
into that here, we go in and we bring in our number one movie, which actually dethrones our movie from last week,
Yep.
and is our returning champion of Spider-Man: No Way Home, coming at number one at $14.13 million, only taking a 30% dip from last week. But this is its sixth week and still holding pretty strong. So it's interesting to see is this was not number one last week, but is number one now this week.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we get into Scream. But
Hmm.
certainly, Spider-Man being an event movie, there's going to be some semblance of resiliency to it.
Yep.
It's a big enough movie where people who have heard about it but don't go to the movies as quickly, they'll come out gradually for it. I'm also pretty curious, like how many people are like actively rewatching this movie. Again, Sony's taking their sweet time with this. They're not dumping it on digital early. They know they've got a big hit. Um, you know, they kind of want to still aim for some box office records because to set the context here, last week we talked about Spider-Man: No Way Home is the number 4 domestic all-time movie. It defeated Black Panther for that spot, and so number 3 is the original Avatar. and that made 760 million. So Spider-Man, as of this weekend, is now only about 40 million or so away. So certainly it's in Sony's best interest, to keep it off of digital for the time being, to kind of let it
Mm-hmm.
play out here during, again, this barren period, just to see how close it can come to ultimately unseating Avatar for number 3.
Yeah. And the part I do find fascinating about that number two. I mean, granted, yes, I realize we have to take inflation in consideration because we're talking about how many years removed from the original Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's got baked in extra padding to it because of the 3D and the IMAX and all that stuff from back in what 2008,
2009.
2009.
Yep.
So the fact that Spider-Man, and I do know that Spider-Man had, because Spider-Man had, like, was it that, like, week one we'll throw it in like one theater for 3D kind of thing.
Yeah, like one or two 3D showings per day. That's typically the norm. But
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, Avatar, when that movie came out, they really tried to
that.
proposition it as you have to see this movie in 3D for the
Mm-hmm.
full Avatar experience. And so, yes, they did make a lot of extra surcharge off of that. Now, Spider Man has made, premium bucks as well, because
Sure.
obviously large format screens outside of IMAX have really taken off in the decades since Avatar came out. You've also got stuff like the what was it, the D box or the 4DX seats or
Oh
other
yeah.
extravagant ways to watch a movie that we don't get out here in the sticks of South Dakota. But there's still ways to make that big bucks, and so yeah, I mean, yeah, they kind of both have their own different types of inflation, but it kind of speaks to how movie going has changed enough
Yeah.
in the decade or so between those movies.
No, definitely. So yeah, I will be curious to see is before this one. I mean, it doesn't even come to digital until March 1st, so I think this definitely has a little bit of legs to has the potential of being able to potentially dethrone that.
Yeah, and what I've been seeing, at least from Sony hasn't really announced anything officially with either these digital dates or their 4K or Blu-ray dates. They've actually kind of been shifting them further and further back. Last I've seen, so
Hmm.
it may come out. I could see it maybe moving up to sometime in early Feb, or maybe not even early February, but maybe like mid-February, to have a 45-day window on it, which is typically what Sony has done with their
Hmm.
movies. But again, Sony's not hurting. Again, they're going to make the box office bucks while they can.
Definitely.
And also, you should keep in mind. I mean, Sony probably wants it to do better than expected because Disney gets 25% of the cut of Spider-Man: No Way Home,
Hmm.
because that was part of when they did the big public negotiation deal for
Yep.
a third Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. Disney's ultimate demand was, we will put up 25% of the money for Spider-Man: No Way Home. In exchange, we get 25% of the box office. So Sony only gets so Disney is already getting, what is it, 180 million of those 720 million dollars. So when you take that out of the equation, Sony has a little bit more that they'll probably want to squeeze that fruit for much more than they can get. So
Oh,
there's that too.
absolutely. Definitely, but would rather better to get 75% of something than 0% of nothing.
Exactly.
All right. So coming in at number two is last week's number one, Scream, coming in at $12.4 million. So just barely taking in the number two spot, but also taking a 59% hit. Which for me, I guess, from a week one to a week two, even at pre-COVID, this is, I mean, for me, for a movie just in general, this is a relatively semi-normal between 45, I think 45 to 55, 60% dip from week to week.
Yeah, I mean, there are several things that are a factor here. The first thing you have to keep in mind is when you have any horror movie coming out in a theater, the horror fans are going to show up on opening weekend in
Yep.
full force. So that's going to be that. On top of that, you've got, especially like for these franchise movies, these movies like that have been going on for like 25 years, like the Scream franchise, that's further going to incite people to come out to the theater on that opening weekend. And unlike other horror movies, Scream also has the big spoiler factor, because
Yep.
there's always that risk of, oh no, I'm going to find out who the killers are in the new Scream movie. I don't want that to happen, so that's why I have to rush out immediately. Ooh, did you get your Scream soundtracks?
I did.
Oh, nice, nice.
So
Very
sorry.
nice. No, that's all right. That's all right. So when you combine all those factors in there, you can kind of see why I'm not surprised why Scream would kind of fall under Spider-Man in its second
Yeah.
week. But again, it's still doing very well. We've hit over $50 million already. It's certainly going to do well, at least these next couple of weekends. It's probably not going to get to the $100 million mark like the first two Scream movies made it. But again, it's already well surpassed Scream 4, which did like 30, 38, I think, total.
Hmm.
So certainly Paramount did something right, kind of making, to your point earlier in the show about January releases, this is the kind of tentpole, that probably does well programming this type of genre type stuff in the January timeframe, where it's enough of a brand name to pull people in. There's enough of a curiosity because what's the original cast up to 25 years later, all that
Right.
sort of stuff that bakes into it.
Yeah. And I was looking, and I mean, in terms of overall, for a movie with this kind of cast, with a large cast, some relatively bigger names coming back to reprise their roles and whatnot, still relatively low budget to the point where even at this point right now, they've already made back double their budget. So at this point right now, it's just basically making up for marketing, and the rest is all icing. So I mean, even at a January release in all of this and whatnot, it's still doing pretty strong. It looks like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is definitely going to be a very profitable movie, especially when you realized again, outside of the core trio of Nev Campbell and David Arquette and Courtney Cox, it's a lot of fresh, newer faces, that aren't going to command much money. Obviously,
Hmm.
the Radio Silence guys, a brand new creative team there. They obviously wouldn't cost as much as, like what a Wes Craven would have commanded back in the day.
Yep.
So there was the ability to be pretty thrifty with this, even though again this was filmed like in the fall of 2020. So, and again, would fall victim to all the cost related to COVID testing and COVID precautions and all that, but still fairly thrifty overall.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I imagine the one thing that this will definitely, I think, help it along is even outside of the box office itself, is that when it does come to, home video and whatnot, all of the people that are the fans of this movie and whatnot, the studio's still going to be able to recoup from there as well, just because I mean, chances are, whether you love or hate any of the Scream movies, you typically will love them and still own them. So I
Yep.
just picture, I think this will have one of those good, sell throughs once that comes available here. Looks like in about 45 days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know I have my Scream movie collection built up over the years, so why not? I mean, we'll definitely um, keep doing that. So,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely. All right. So with that, here we go into number three, with Sing 2 still holding strong through the last month and so. $5.71 million, taking a 28% drop. Um, and this is still, as you mentioned here, and we've mentioned in weeks past here, this is still holding relatively good in the theater, even though people can go watch this at home.
yep.
Um, but again, as we've said multiple times over the last course of the 5 weeks, well, this is really all that's it. If you want to get your kids out of the house and take them to the movies, this is your option.
Yep. And, we've said it before. That's what's really going to keep this movie afloat in theaters is just
Mhm.
for that reason alone. You know, it, there's obviously some half hearted attempts, to see if there would be anything to have for the family, but that's really what it is. I mean, in terms of like true, certainly in terms of animated content,
Mhm.
but also just in terms of like general family content that's going to appeal to them, as well as the parents and stuff like that. That's really the only option out there. And so I would not be surprised, as the weeks go on, you know, we're going to see these really small drops just for that reason alone. I mean,
Mhm.
28%, it maybe is even a little deeper than I would have anticipated, given that it's the only family fare out there. But again, it'll have some legs because of that, at least in the next few weeks while it still holds on to theaters because nothing else is going on.
Yeah.
So,
I think part of that, like when you're saying about the 28% drop though, is I feel is that it's one of those kind of things that if a family did go out and did go check this out and the kids liked it and whatnot, because we have it available on VOD,
Yep.
that they're saying, okay, well now I'm willing to drop $20 on it right now, and watch it at home because I can watch it over and over, as opposed to going to the theater to, spend more money on concessions and stuff like that.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of occurred to me when I was thinking about Sing 2 and how well it might be doing at home right now is it's kind of having some competition, because Encanto obviously has kind of been really firing up on the internet and social media these last few weeks solely because it's free on Disney Plus, and therefore people are definitely rewatching that movie over
Hmm.
there. Which might have an impact on Sing 2 because obviously you still have to shell out the $20 for Sing 2 and you're only getting it for 48 hours because it's still just a premium VOD rental.
Right.
But in Kanto, you know, this is how you get to the point of like we don't talk about Bruno racking up like 100 million views on YouTube over the course of the past several weeks. So there is that impact too. 'Cause there kind of is some family competition, but it's definitely not happening in the theatrical space.
Yeah. Yeah, I turn on my hits, playlist on my in the car and whatnot. All of a sudden, I was like, "Why do I recognize the song?" And it was the Bruno song. I'm like, "Oh, that's why. Got it."
Yep.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And if Disney has shown us anything, is that, coming at the price point that they did for Disney Plus, um, and for the amount of content and how quick they're turning that content around now,
Yep.
it's definitely proving to people it's worth the $80 a year to, if you whether if you did the monthly or if you did the yearly plan, because I mean, clearly, I mean, just between Marvel and like Encanto, and they're now turning Red is going to become Disney Plus exclusive, as opposed to going to theaters and whatnot. Like they're definitely putting, studios that have like Sing and, Illumination and all that, on their ear and say, okay, here's what we got. What's your angle?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're flipping a lot of stuff very quickly because again, they've got Eternals on there already that dropped a couple weeks ago. I know
Hmm.
Free Guy is going to show up on Disney Plus here very soon. Yeah, they have no qualms about taking their content, even the theatrical content, and putting it, on the streaming service relatively quick. I mean, they still know how to give it enough of a window in theaters to make the big bucks.
Right.
But then, they flip it to home much more quickly than we're accustomed to, and it kind of has a second life there too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I will just keep eating it all up. All right, coming in at number 4, the first week for the Redeeming Love, $3.71 million, B plus cinema score. So I mean, I guess doing okay. Nothing more than I guess we would expect, considering even though this is kind of a slump month and whatnot, this is also it is still going up against some, heavy hitters, more or less. So this it is does not honestly surprise me where it lands.
Yeah, I mean, this was never going to have like a supercharged audience. Again, this is a faith-based mid 1800s romance. I saw the numbers coming in Saturday morning, the early numbers, and I realized this movie was going to be in the top five. So on Saturday night, I actually decided to see this movie to figure
Okay.
out what I'm actually going to talk about. It's a
Was it worth
pretty
it?
it's a very bizarre romance. It's about a uh, young woman who's basically spent her entire life in prostitution, and he meets a hunky farmer who's a very pious and religious farmer who tries to give her a comfortable life outside of the realm of sex work. It's really weird because it's like it is technically like an actual like faith-based movie. It's from Pureflix, the people who did like the God's Not Dead movies,
Mhm.
but it's also a very steamy PG-13, so to speak. The type of stuff that I would not have expected from them. It's also got a semi-stacked cast because it's got like Famke Jensen as like the matriarch of the prostitution house, and
Yep.
Logan Marshall Green from Upgrade, and Nina Dobrev from Vampire Diaries. So it's got some names in it. As I have also mentioned on my social media, this is from the guy who just directed Triple X Return of Xander Cage. And there's no bigger swing movie wise than going from a Vin Diesel vehicle to a Western romance. I've never seen a big swing like that, but there you go.
That is the kind of swing that if it was done for personal reasons or whatever the case is, and they chose to make that decision, awesome. The other part of me, it just feels like you went from Xander Cage to this, going, I need a paycheck.
That's true. That's true. So that's very possible. Who knows? But anyway, this movie exists. I'm sure we'll probably talk about it next week for reasons we'll get into in a little bit.
Yep.
But it's out there. The one thing that I did kind of surprise me is if you're going to release a romantic movie at this time, it probably would have behooved them to maybe like even wait a week or two where
Yep.
it kind of can overlap with Valentine's Day. As it stands right now, I don't know that it's going to be in theaters by the time Valentine's Day rolls around, which kind of feels like a bit of a lost opportunity, but that's just me.
I agree. I would 100% agree with that and whatnot. If you have anything that's going to be a love story of sorts and whatnot, and you are going to release it in the first quarter of the year, push it as close to February, whether it be, obviously you want to be either during that week or before or whatnot. But I mean, even this probably would even still do better if you did it after Valentine's Day, if you got it close enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but that's what it is. And as it stands, it's making some money. It's not making a big amount. And again, this is a Universal movie, so it's going to VOD in 3 weeks anyway. So there's that too.
You got me all kind of curious as to see if do we know what kind of budget this thing had.
Um
Uh, it's not currently listed, so I'm not
y-
surprised.
yeah, it's probably small. I know this filmed all the way in South Africa, despite being set in California during the gold rush. This like completed filming like days before the initial COVID shutdown. So
Mm,
there's that gauge that too. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's pretty small and thrifty overall, like many of the
oh,
other movies we're talking about. So
oh, definitely. All right, and then coming in at number 5, we have The King's Man, coming in at 1.78 million, only a 20% drop from its week 5. And as you've got noticed here, is in just under a month, we have our Hulu and HBO Max debut on February 18th.
yeah, I mean, we were just talking about how Disney Plus is flipping its content around very quickly to streaming, and
Hmm.
last week we actually got a bunch of announcements for the other Fox/Disney movies that aren't appropriate for Disney Plus. So this is going to both HBO Max and Hulu. We also got the announcement about Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley going to those same two services on
Yep.
February 1st. No word yet on if West Side Story is going to make a quick leap to streaming. I'm guessing it's not because I'm sure Steven Spielberg wants his movies to play in the theaters so that he gets his money made and has his stature and all that stuff. But again, I was kind of surprised to see that announcement come that quickly for the Kingsman while it's still in a fair number of theaters. But, that's just how it plays. So,
I know. I was on HBO Max over the weekend and whatnot. I was looking at the coming soon, and I'd known about Nightmare Alley, but I had not known about this one. I'm like, oh, okay, so that one's just coming around the corner here.
yeah.
Um,
And that's, almost a 60-day window on it, which is not terrible. Again, this is part of the whole deal that Disney negotiated with HBO because, again, all these Fox movies were always committed to go to HBO
yep,
Max eventually. But they negotiated the deal where it's like, okay, on the plus side, these movies will come to HBO Max much faster if you agree to this deal because it might take like 6 or 7 months ultimately. But here you've got stuff flipping around in like 45 to 60 days now because of it. But it comes at the expense of, well, the caveat is that we want to stream them too. So there is that. But, again, these movies will be readily available and they'll have a good second wind on streaming services. So
yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, I agree. And plus, not everybody in the planet is going to be somebody who's like you and I, who's got Hulu and HBO. So,
Yes.
they have that advantage of going, our movie is going to be seen whether you have HBO or Hulu.
Yep.
So I mean, I'd say for a studio, that's a win-win. And I guess for Warner Brothers slash HBO, it's a matter of going, oh, so we're gonna get that content that's still relatively fresh and hot right now. We're gonna get it sooner, so it's gonna get those eyes on our service as well. So I can't see why you. I mean, why would you not say yes to that deal?
Yeah, I mean, now that you have me mention, I'm looking at my HBO Max coming soon section right now, and I see
Mm-hmm.
they're putting out Antlers on February 11th. They're streaming Free Guy again on February 23rd. The French Dispatch is already coming February 25th. So yeah, they are just whipping through these movies incredibly quickly. So,
Yeah.
yay.
I know if it weren't for the fact that I needed to get through French Dispatch sooner than that, I
Yep.
would have I would have just waited for that as well.
Yep.
All right, so that has been our top 5 for this week. We have again our recap. Spider-Man: No Way Home returns to number 1 at $14.13 million, taking the throne from Scream at number 2 at $12.4 million. Taking number 3 is Sing 2, excuse me, kids movie, $5.71 million. Number 4, Redeeming Love, $3.71 million, and number 5, The King's Men, holding strong at $1.78 million. The way the Kingsmen started, you would think, oh no, it'll be gone in a couple weeks. That he's hold
Nope.
Ray Fiennes is holding on to that top 5.
He is with all his Britishness.
Ah, I love me some Ray Fiennes. All right. So, and with that, and you alluded to this earlier here when it comes to what we have to talk about next week. Well, yeah, nothing.
Nope.
Uh,
Yep. I avidly keep checking like my Cinemark apps just to see if by chance they'll have anything new in theaters next week. As of this recording on Sunday night, there is nothing new. Um, the Again, I should mention this coming weekend was supposed to be the weekend that Morbius was supposed to come out,
yep.
and then Sony pulled it a few weeks ago. They pushed it back to April, and my hope was that okay, Morbius pulled out, but I'm sure some other enterprising studio will put some movie out on that January 28th release date. And well, that never happened. So a little disappointing. The one rumor that I have heard, and this is kind of, I've been noticing this build up, is that I think from the looks of it, this Friday is going to be the weekend that Licorice Pizza uh, moves forward with its national expansion.
Okay.
I know like theaters and like Mitchell and Huron are going to bring it in. I've heard a rumbling that the West Mall 7 is finally going to play it here in Sioux Falls. So I think it's going to move up. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be enough where it could actually unseat the Kingsman from that fifth spot. It would have to make like 1.5 million next weekend to do that, but I'm
Yep.
skeptical that that would happen. But that's the closest thing I've heard to anything happening. So, other than that, it's probably going to be the same top 5 that we'll have talked about this week. But if there are any surprises, we will certainly let you know.
I would be kind of curious, just all of a sudden, hey, look at here's Sony going, hey, by the way, we're going to do this again. No, we lied. Here, go watch Morbius.
Just
Sony
get
would
it out
never.
there at this point. Come on.
Sony would never do that. So
Nope.
Sony's going to hold on to those 10 pulls for as long as they can.
Yep. Yep.
All right. So that has been the box office for this week. Be sure to join us every week as we discuss the box office, because we just like to throw those out and just let you know how everything's going and what should you go see. Because I like the fact that you were looking at the numbers, Derek, and you're like, oh, looks like we're gonna have to talk about Redeeming Love. So I guess I got to drop my $8 to go see.
Why not? Those who know me know that I'll see random stuff at the movies. So
You
why
will go
not put
watch
it toward
anything.
the weekly backlot content that we have? It's great.
Absolutely. And as for said content, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterbox HQ, all at Backlot 605. Be sure to also check out the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon, and you can check out our pretty faces on YouTube. And also be sure to go to patreon.com/backlot Backlot 605, where you can support the show. What do we look forward to next week here, Derek?
Let's see here. I know on the Patreon you guys have already dropped a Scream episode. I've yet to listen to that, but I'm sure that was some spirited discussion. I believe next you guys are working on Hotel Transylvania, Transformania, a movie that we probably would have discussed on this show, except for the fact that Sony decided to sell the movie to Amazon Prime. So there you go. And then also, of course, we also have to continue mentioning the next live event that we have, which is the Backlot 605 Schmuckies annual awards ceremony happening February 10th at 7 p.m. at Spellbound Magic Shop here on 41st and Marion in Sioux Falls. Again, myself and Brian and Sam Lenz will serve on the panel discussing all the Schmuckies nominees. Our good friend Charlie Eccles will be hosting. We've also got, I got to look at this, we've got music by Aaron Keller, comedy by Jamie Tucker, and magic by the owner of Spellbound, Travis Nye. We've heard some rumblings already that Travis Nye will be using our own Sam Lenz again for some magic tricks, which already makes this a must-see show just for that. If any of you saw what happened between Travis and Sam last year on the show, you'll know that that was an incredibly hilarious experience, and I'm glad that gets to happen again.
I'm so glad we got that on tape.
Yes. And we'll have this on tape again too, because I'm
Yes.
pretty sure we'll be live streaming it again, of course. So again, it'll be very exciting. I can't wait to see how Sam will freak out this time. It'll be
No,
hilarious, but all good fun.
but now I almost feel like I need to go to that last year's Smuckies, just pull out that one spot
Yep.
of Sam and Travis, and that just needs to be its own thing on YouTube.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I actually kind of had the same thought. Like, extract that spot, repost it. Like, this is what happened last year. You must tune in or come to Spellbound to see what happens this year. So it promotes itself.
It does promote itself. All right, so that has been the Backlot Box Office here, and we will check you out here next week.
See ya.
Bye.